everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Biohacking Beauty. I'm very excited to spend the next hour with you and with my esteemed guest that I have on today. Her name is Zora Benhamou, and Zora is an amazing person. She's a gerontologist, but she's also passionate specifically about aging and longevity. And really, what I love about her is her mission to disrupt the ageist stereotypes in social media. She's also the host of the Hack My Age podcast, and that podcast is one of my favorites. It focuses on biohacking for women over 50. She also has a wonderful website, hackmyage.com. In general, an amazing person. She's 52 years old. She's a digital nomad. She traveled to over 50 countries. She lived in age. She speaks 6 languages. She wrote, she's an author of the Longevity Master Plan, which is an amazing book, and a cookbook, Eating for Longevity. So she's a real wealth of knowledge, and there is a wonderful community around her and Hack My Age. So through her social media, through her website, she reaches over 100,000 people with her message. And that is growing very, very quickly. And I can say it from firsthand, watching her grow. A little bit about her. She received a master's in gerontology in University of Southern California, a very prestigious university. She's a certified sports nutrition coach. She completed the Menopause for Athletes program by Dr. Stacy Sims, and she's also a certified breathwork instructor under Oxygen Advantage Advanced. She's an advanced breathwork instructor there. We are going to dive deep into what it means to aim for longevity for women specifically over 50. That looks completely differently as far as women and men in that stage. We're going to dive deep into skincare, nutrition, habits, ageism. A wonderful episode too. We're going to learn what is a gerontologist and what are they discovering about the impact of attitudes of aging, including beauty, on health. For example, people with positive attitudes live 7.5 years longer. The correlation between beauty and lifespan, skin health, self-perceptions of beauty, personal hygiene, taking care of oneself, and as an important factor. What is ageism and the impact it has on our attitudes of aging and health? Reducing ageism increases healthy life expectancy, so that's something we do want to learn about. And healthy life expectancy also reduces ageism, so it's bidirectional. Beautiful episode. I really hope you will love it. Before we dive into the episode, I'd like to remind everyone that they can subscribe. So I love it if you took 2 seconds out of your day and subscribe to this podcast. Not only so you can make sure you don't miss an episode, it also helps the algorithm, and other people are going to see it and are going to join our community as well. And last but not least, I would like to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by the company I co-founded and I'm the CEO of, which is called Young Goose. And it's the world's first biohacking skincare company. What we do is we aim to lower the functional age of the skin, mainly through the NAD precursors and supporting molecules in our care and eye care. And then we aim at targeting specific things with our serums. So whether it is wrinkles, pigmentation, laxity, acne, hydration, all of those things, we biohack them through our serums. And our number one seller, the hyperbaric mask that mimics the effects of hyperbarics, and you go to sleep with it, that is kind of ramping everything up. But yeah, without further ado, please welcome the great and powerful Zora Benhamou.
A lot of people wouldn't put that connection between gerontology and taking care of yourself or looking good. You know, it's not about being vain, right? And vain necessarily isn't a bad word, but it's important to take care of yourself if you want to live a long life or a healthy life or a health span as we talk about this. So taking care of yourself and your self hygiene gives you a reason to wake up in the morning, put on your makeup, take a shower. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, it's just literally getting out of bed and brushing their teeth. And some people can't even do that. So there's a whole spectrum of beauty, just from waking up and showering all the way up into really doing some of the, a lot of self care.
Yeah.
But it is very important because how you feel inside and how you feel outside on the outside, both inside outside,
Mm-hmm.
is going to reflect your health. So it's a chicken and egg. What's more important to you, but they're both very, very important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they're obviously intertwined, right? Us as human beings, we're not very good intuitively in grasping the impact of continuous small decisions, right? We're not very good at understanding that if we're going to stop and have lunch at McDonald's, like once, nothing's going to happen. But if we do it continuously, obviously, we all saw the Super Size Me movie or whatever that is. Like in 30 days, you're gonna basically change your body as a whole. So, what are some of the some of the decisions that you see that have cumulative impact, or what are some of the obviously, how does research look at a healthy decision making as far as the aging goes?
Well, yeah, decision making is, I mean, it depends how you define healthy decision making, but
Mm-hmm.
taking those steps to choose the right foods or to get to bed on time or to exercise. I mean, in gerontology, it's actually biohacking is way beyond the gerontology aspect. In gerontology, we're just kind of looking at the general population. If we can just get them to change their diet and exercise, that would be great. But the real spectrum is the sleep and the stress management and all that. And so we need to, it is, the research shows, yeah, definitely, if you are able to manage the stress and have a healthy diet, whatever that means to you,
Mm-hmm.
get some exercise, and the sleep component is super important. But to me, it seems a lot of it boils down to the stress aspect, because if you're in a stressed out state, or if you have anxiety, or if you have depression is a big thing that we talk about in gerontology as we age. Depression is a big thing. You think, oh, it's just teenagers or young people going through their lives, but do you know who is the most successful at actually suicide rates, for example? Suicide rates. Who are
Mm-hmm.
most successful at that?
I'd probably say like tribal societies in Africa or Asia.
Yeah, well, so actually, unfortunately, it's not enough studies done in Africa, and this is one of my questions. It was a big beef with my professors. Is that what's going on? They'll tell us what's happening in Asia, what's happening in
Mm-hmm.
in, in America, and so I studied at USC, and it's an American university. They tried to bring in the international aspect, but so we don't know really for Africans. But for the research shows, is that white older Americans. I mean,
Mm.
white older men, sorry, not Americans, white older men are more at risk of depression and suicide, and they're most successful at it.
Mm.
Maybe younger people actually make more attempts. Women also make attempts, but they're just not as successful as the men. So, in fact, that's a category that's really, really important in terms of depression and suicide. So, we need to not ignore that population as well.
Do you think part of it, like especially if we're differentiating younger and older people attempting suicide, do you think that at one point in time we're going to categorize it as completely different types of suicide attempts? One is like obviously a call for help, and another one is a life-ending decision or a decision to end your life.
I
Because
don't see, I don't see the difference. They're both, they both want to end their lives. I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so yeah, my question is, are they both trying to end their lives? When you were talking about younger people, for whatever reason, maybe you're not, we have less of an understanding of what life is, what we're
Hmm.
trying to end for that matter. And that, we might be in a place where things seem so bleak. We want things to change, and that is the most drastic thing we can do, but we're not as decisive as far as taking all the necessary steps in order to complete, to be successful. And on the other hand, maybe you don't have
the means to be really successful, whatever that is. You're not going to be left alone as much. Obviously, like if you're older, you're alone, you're going to end your life. Or if you're a teenager ending your life and your mom is waiting downstairs for you to eat lunch or whatever, there are some like different elements there that play a role into success.
Actually, you're right, and I'm not an expert in suicide. So, in fact, I would. It kind of reminds me, perhaps younger people want the attention, and they don't quite completely fulfill that. I really don't know, so I don't want to say that, but that could see that, and yes, and the reason why they're successful is I can't answer that. But
Yeah.
we do need to pay attention to that, and that's a reflection. I mean, when you're depressed, well, what happens? You stop taking care of yourself. You're not going to go out. You're not going to put on your makeup. You're not going to take care of your skin. You're not going to shower. You probably barely eat. And so, yeah, I mean, if you are with somebody or know somebody who's going through depression and you see this, the day you see them start to take care of themselves or shower or go out and put on some nice clothes, you go, oh, thank God, they're okay. They're looking good. They're looking healthy, right? And their skin is, you'll see it in their skin, in their eyes, in their hair. And that's why it's important, when to say looks, it's not just about being vain. It's it's really a reflection of your health.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's well, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, the skin is the organ that is going to sacrifice itself as far as your health goes, right? Like your skin is obviously sacrificing itself, defending you from outside aggressors, UV, pollution, EMF, and on and on. And that is why if we're not healthy, our skin's not going to be healthy, because it is going to sacrifice itself for the general, wellness of the body. But on the other hand, yeah, you're right. Where we are taking care of ourselves, obviously, our skin is something that is very apparent it is kind of what we're putting out there, no pun intended. And if we don't care about that, then we're not gonna look our best. Is it something that you can also infer as far as the other side of the spectrum? Do people who socialize more, they have a better social life, they're happier, do they normally take extra good care of themselves, or is it like a middle point where it kind of evens out?
First of all,
I'll ask it like in a different way. So we were talking about people who are not feeling good within their body, about themselves, about their life, etc. And it is obvious that it translates into obviously less good skin care and overall care, right? Most of the time when we're looking at a extreme scenario, what we're trying to do is magnify normal behavior so we can look at the end result of it. But we are trying to understand relationship between happiness, content, and self-care. Sometimes I feel that self-care not for me, not for people around me, is not like is congruent with happiness up to a certain degree. What I mean is, how people who grew up in poverty, suddenly they have some money, they're going to spend money on their outside appearance, and they're going to, buy expensive things, etc. But at some point, there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door or something like that, where at some point you have so much money, you're basically disenchanted by, your ego is not attached to showing off anymore, for that matter. So is there what is the relationship that you're seeing between taking care of yourself and happiness? Do you need to suffer to some extent to care about how you look, and then it kind of lowers if you're really, really happy because you don't care about what the environment thinks? Or is it something that you see kind of grow as much as the person cares about themselves? I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly.
Well, I think you're trying to say that, is there a correlation between happiness and the way you look?
And the way you look, and the way you take care of yourself, etc.
Yeah. And the way maybe how much effort you make in terms of taking care of yourself. And then there's sort of alluded, does money have anything to do with this? Is the money going to make you happier? And then you're going to look better, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely, we've seen people who have plenty of money and they're not taking care of themselves because usually they're not happy. So I think there is that correlation between your happiness and taking care of yourself. If you're in a good mood and you have your time schedule set and you have your routines and you want to look good and you spend that time. And we always kind of assume that self-care means putting on makeup and taking a shower and dressing up nicely. But self-care is also about being kind to yourself, about being patient with yourself and not criticizing yourself all the time, or getting to bed on time, or watching a sunset once in a while. There's all these things that are self-care, or it's getting a massage once in a while. But it's so much more than what I think we're alluding to or what people think. So it is a big thing. But we know that when you're happier, it reflects on the outside. But I did a very interesting conference that I organized in Hong Kong. It was 2017, I think. And I had 5 experts and my 5 longevity pillars. And there was one who was a Chinese medicine doctor, and her pillar was beauty. Okay. So beauty as a Chinese medicine doctor, was interesting what she was going to say. And so what she was saying is to actually, yes, take care of yourself on the outside, even if you're not happy and you're not feeling well, put on some makeup or go outside and make that effort, and you will feel happier. You will feel better inside, because we always talk about from the inside out, right? Inside out. But she kind of reversed it. And I thought that was super interesting that she said that. And I think we've all been in a dumps or moody blue mood or something. And we said, you know what, I'm just going to make that effort. I'll just, get outside and do my best and try to have a good appearance. And then suddenly things just kind of turn around. Not every time, but we've all had, I think, those moments. So I think it's bi-directional, right? And I think this is, I'm not an expert in depression or mental health, but when we see people who are depressed, well, they're not going to go out. They really don't want to go out. And I think it's really, really hard for them. And they get to the point, whenever I ask somebody who's gone through depression, I said, how do you get out of this? And some of them just say, you have to take those small steps and literally get out of the house. And they do have to put on some clothes, right? Or they have to, take a shower. And then it just kind of, bit by bit. This is just the few people that I've spoken to who've gone through it. And I thought that is super interesting. So it's, again, bi-directional. I think they do go hand in hand, but where is that point? I'm not really sure.
I agree. I think Tony Robbins is really, big on changing like fluctuation in the environment or in yourself, in your mood or whatever, by constantly trying new things, new attitudes, etc. And that is something, obviously it doesn't work all the time. Like if you're going to try and do the same thing over and over again, it's not going to snap you out of whatever situation you're in. You have to kind of try different things constantly, so you get a different change in paradigm, change in attitude or whatever. But what we've been talking about here is more on the actual steps that are individual, right? It is individual from a person to a person. What they, one person likes putting makeup, the other one won't. They're going to like to put creams on, or they're going to like to, whatever that may be, go for a run, whatever makes them feel like they're taking care of themselves. But what is global is, or as far as like research go, is that there is specific data that shows increase in lifespan through positive mood, right? What does the data show us? How can we incentivize something to find their own way to have a positive attitude? What's the end goal?
There's a very interesting research study, and I'll have to pull it out. I can send it to you, and it's it'll come to me who wrote this. I think it's Beck. So anyways, he said, these researchers, they studied older adults, and they asked about their attitudes towards aging. And they asked them, well, is it a good thing, a bad thing, positive, negative? And what they found was those who had positive attitudes towards aging, it's not such a bad thing, I'm going through it, or I'm happy, or etc., then they lived 7.5 years longer than those who had the negative. And that's pretty significant. Just and when you think about it, it makes sense. And there's another very interesting researcher, Paul Nash, who did a great study, and he came up with this model it's called AIR model. It's called acquisition, internalization, and reinforcement. And so these have to do also with your attitudes towards aging, and they start from about 6 years old, when we see how older adults are, or how they're treated, or how our parents treat their own parents, and etc. And we start to formulate these ideas of what it means to get old. And And then by the time that's sort of the acquisition phase. And then by the time we start to feel some of these aging effects, such as gray hair or wrinkles, or feeling tired, or we're walking slower, or we have a pain, we go, oh, I must be getting old. Okay.
Mhm.
And so you're internalizing these things. But what happens is that if you take this a little bit too far in a negative way, and you start to behave, you really internalize this in a negative way where you are giving up on sport. Oh, I'm getting old, I have some pain, and I don't need to exercise, I got to slow down. And when you're like 50 years old or something, you're like, well, no, you're going to actually age faster if you don't do these things that are going to help you live longer. And then what's happening is you start to behave like an older person a little bit too early, and you are reinforcing this into society so that those younger people see, oh, you're supposed to shuffle when you walk, or you're supposed to be a hunchback when you get older, or you're supposed to be crabby, or whatever negative stereotypes you decide to put out there. And so then that creates these ageist stereotypes, and we're trying to break these. This is what gerontologists do, is try to break those stereotypes, because they are negative and they will shorten your lifespan. They will create a lot of problems for society, for the government, for the health budget, for everything. So we really need to be aware of our attitude towards aging. And it doesn't mean you have to dye your hair and get Botox. I mean, it's just, I'm okay whether you decide to do that or not. That's you got to have a positive attitude. So if you are happy, you embrace your gray hair and you say, I'm just happy with my wrinkles, it doesn't mean you're letting yourself go. You're still taking care of yourself in many other ways. You just don't care about that. That's perfectly fine. And you have a positive attitude. If you say, you know what, I'm going to feel better and I'm going to just be happier and get to the gym more often if I do Botox or dye my hair, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. It's just the attitude. What is going to give you that positive attitude so that you actually live longer and healthier?
Yes, I agree with you. Especially, so obviously we again, like anyone who cultivates a better self-image, again, however they do it, whatever tools they choose to utilize in order to do it, again, I fully support that, and I believe that's the main goal, right? But we are also seeing that the appearance, so the age that you are perceived as, so how old basically you look, does have a correlation to things like health span, longevity, overall health, biological age, which is different than chronological age, right?
Yes.
So we are seeing some correlation there. Do you think this correlation is so? I want to talk a little bit about this correlation, because sometimes I'm going to meet people who are saying, well, this correlation is because beauty comes from the inside, and as the healthier you are, the better you look, etc. And some other people are saying it is more attitude based. You're basically displaying self-care, which would translate then to the inside. I believe the truth obviously is somewhere in the middle, but what are you seeing as far as, what is science seeing as far as the correlation between how we look and our biological age, or life expectancy, etc.?
Well, yes, I think the way you look, it definitely is. We have enough studies to show that it's related to longevity in
Yeah.
terms of health. Like when you take twin studies, for example, are very often done, and you'll have same DNA, and you have one looking much younger than the other because they're taking care of themselves, or they're not out exposed to the sun so often, or maybe they didn't have an adverse childhood event, or experience that changed their life course and changed actually their DNA, and sorry, the genetic expression. And so then they go on the spiral downhill. So two same people, same DNA, and then they can look very, very different. And we can see one is healthier, lives longer than the other, even though they're twins. And then you can also have people who, you see people's biological age and their chronological age can be very different as well. And that's genetic as well. So we do see, and it's mostly through twin studies, that it's quite clear that the way you look in terms of just that person's taking care of themselves. They're not smoking, and they're taking, exercising and doing all this self-care, and they're living a little bit longer. So there is no doubt. And I think, like you said, there is that sort of middle ground as well, where they're both important. There's part where genetic does play a role, and you can be horrifically ugly and you're living an amazing life, right? And you're living super long, and that's you're smoking and you're drinking, and we all know those people who can get away with everything. They don't take care of themselves, and they're living really long. And that's genes. And we always say genes load the gun, but lifestyle and diet and all that stuff pulls the trigger. So, and it's about, people would say between 10 and 20% is genetic in terms of how long you live, and the other 80, 90% more or less. However, when you look at those people who are burning the candle at both ends and doing everything that they're not supposed to do and living long, well, they may have maybe only 10 or 20% of it is genetic, but those are pretty powerful genes. And that's just winning the lottery.
Yeah, I think we should, at some point, we're going to do an episode about those genes like FOXO4 or ApoE4, for example, is on the other side of that spectrum. Genes that either age you faster or slower. And definitely, it's funny that you're mentioning like 10 to 20% is genetics, and the rest is how you handle those genetics or what you're doing along your life, because we can see the same thing happening in skin aging specifically. So there's something extrinsic and intrinsic skin aging. So intrinsic would be chronological aging, but from the point of epigenetic, our genes are not functioning as well anymore. We're creating less collagen and etc. And in the adverse of that, extrinsic aging would be like exposure to UV damage or pollution, etc. And we're seeing that 80% of skin aging is extrinsic. So we can see a lot of correlation there. I think a lot of the correlation is also because, especially like twin studies, things like that, it is even more clear that we have some program that's running as far as like responses. If this is going to happen, that's how our body is going to respond. But obviously the calls for responses, the things we're going through are what determine how well we're going to function, right? People, in the industrial revolution, when they were working in coal mines, they were exposed to a lot of pollution, etc. Obviously lived 50 was a ripe old age, right? And today, 50 years old, we consider it the height of a person's life. So definitely we can see it also de facto. Do you think the attitude towards aging or age or ageism has changed because life expectancy has changed as well? How do we adjust, as a society, to the fact that people are living longer and functioning at an older age?
Yeah, we need to combat ageism big time, and it's one of the most serious isms in that sense. It's the biggest problem in terms of isms because it's generally accepted. It's people think it's okay to say you look good for your age. Right? It's like, okay, why don't I just look good, right? So, and we need to stop that. And we need to stop people from saying, oh, 60 is the new 40 or 50 is the new 30. Like, just be 60 and show everybody what friggin' awesome 60 looks like. Like, stop saying, this is part of the problem. So we need to stop this because we are living longer. So yes, we are going to have people, more people on the older people on the planet now who are staying around a lot longer. And so we are using more healthcare resources, and we are seeing more people sick and all, et cetera, et cetera. So if we want, this is a huge burden on a government and a healthcare system. So if we want to save the budget, and we want to, on terms, and not only just let's help people live longer, but, we want to have these people healthy. Right. And we want them to contribute to society. And this is where a big problem is, because we're not integrating older adults in society. When somebody gets old, we just shove them to the side or put them in a community or put them in a hospital, and that's it. And we don't see these people. We fire them. And these are valuable resources. People who are older have experience that younger people don't have. Maybe there is some physical or cognitive decline, but we can shift, and we can can also, we don't need to, it's like pivoting at work, right? Maybe you can't do this. You can't be the best soccer player on the team now. Now you maybe got to go to coaching, or now you can do other things. So, but doesn't mean you have to get out of the world and be fired and you're done. So we want to keep these people integrated into society, but we also need to show them. I think there's two responsibilities. One is society and the government and people and their attitudes to older adults, and the other one is, the older adult needs to show up as well. Like you need to be taking care of yourself, and you not don't fall into a rut, and and you can still work, and you can still do plenty of things, and that is the responsibility of the older adult as well. So if you can show up in a good condition and show that you are still valuable as well, then you're more likely to be accepted into society, and then you're going to be in a healthier position, less of a burden on society or the healthcare system, and it just all spirals in a very positive way. So, but that is the responsibility of two different components.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny that there is ageism, definitely, but most of the leaders that the world chooses is the same age that we also subject people to obviously to forced retirement, etc. At some point. So there is definitely dissonance there, and I think also there's if we look at the way that we evolved or our genetic blueprint, we are only animals, and us included, were only valuable to the genetic pool normally when we're at a childbearing age, right? Or life-giving age. And normally after that, the animal kind of quickly disappears, quickly dies. I think humans, the reason that we have the ability to live for so long after we are not active contributors to the survival of our species is because of that ability to contribute in different ways and in more diverse ways, and in more ways of people who carry ancient knowledge and passing it on. That allowed, obviously through a genetic point of view, allowed us to extend the life expectancy after again, like being active participants in the genetic pool, because and we're kind of designed to play different roles as we grow older, and we wouldn't have like 80-year-old people if we are not designed to be an active member of society at that age. I think we're genetically built to be an active member. If not, we're going to die. That's nature. I mean, it is what it is. But you're obviously a nomad, right? You travel around the world. Do you see countries that are doing it better than us here in the United States or the Western world?
Well, when it comes to ageism, there are certain cultures that I see, and research has shown as well, that are more accepting of older adults, and usually they're in Asia, where the older adult is revered for their wisdom and they're respected. And not everyone. I meet plenty of people who don't want to respect their parents or their grandparents, and they say they're a big pain in the butt, but they still, it's the family bond is so strong in some of these cultures that they're there anyways, whether they like it or not. Whereas in the Western cultures, we're like, you know what, I'm just going to move, or I won't see my parents, or I won't take care of them. It's just not as ingrained. But there is tend to be more of the respect, but also genuine. And I was very interesting. There were a lot of Asians in my class in gerontology, and all the gerontology courses, and I'd always ask them, and they were much younger, and I said, well, why are you studying gerontology? And they said very often, well, either they worked with older adults or their grandparents. And they said, my grandma raised me, and I just absolutely loved her, and I loved her friends and older adults, and there was this really positive experience to older adults that I didn't see very often with other people. And so, but in my own travels as a nomad, you did see this. There was one very curious experience that I had that I'm still on the fence about, is in Bhutan. Have you been to Bhutan?
No.
Do you know? So it's
Yeah, I heard. The only thing I heard is that one of the measurements of the success of the country is the happiness of its population, right?
Yes, they're known for their happiness index. And so when I went there, a guide took me to a temple, and so that's what you do. You go visit temples, and I saw all of these older people I would say probably late 60s until their 90s, walking around, walking around a circle around this temple as they were exercising, and then just sort of socializing and hanging out. And I asked God, I said, what's going on here? And there's so many, they're all here. And it's not like mass or something. And it turned out to be like a daycare. Like that's the way they take care of their older parents, but these kids have to work. Or older children, right, have to go to work, so they drop off their parents, their the grandparents at this place, and they force them to stop working. They said no, they don't want their parents to work. They've worked all their life, whether they like it or not, they have to stop, and we want to put them here in this social experience. And I just thought, well, what if they want to work? They said no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And so I'm a little bit, I didn't really like that answer, because I thought, well, if I'm an older adult, I want to be working. If I want to work, I want to work. If I want to be with my friends, and I'll be with my friends, but don't drop me off at a daycare. And it's a very different society, and it's a very different way. But the way they looked at it is absolute respect, with love. They want the best for their parents, so they did it with the best intentions. I'm just not sure if the intentions are the best. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. What a lot of gerontology is about is kind of trying to find recipes for a happier world, right? But concentrating on doing it through caring for the people close to the third part of their life, to the later third of their life. I think people, as we said before, experiencing decline when something changes inside, your attitude changes inside, the physical decline is also imminent. I think that when a person doesn't feel like they are an active contributor to whatever that is, to their family, to the society as a whole, to the village that they live in, whatever that is, that's when a lot of the emotional and physical decline starts to happen, right? We see in blue zones, for example, that a sense of contribution to the community is a big part of what increases health span and lifespan in those communities. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. And there's enough research showing that having a purpose in life, or what we call ikigai in Japanese, reason to wake up in that morning is to why would you want to keep living, right? Because you have something to do. And those people in the blue zones are, even in their older years, they're taking care of their grandkids, or they're going to work in a shop, or whatever. It's their ikigai, their purpose and reason to wake up, and that's what we all need that, I think, at any age, right? You could be 20 years old, just finished out of college, and just say, well, what am I going to do with my life? Well, we all need to have that purpose in life, and no matter what age. And we do have enough research showing that people who do have that are living longer. And so, in gerontology, we learn a lot about how we should encourage older adults to keep working and all that. But there was this discussion where, working as long as you are happy with your job, right? Because there are people working in a really bad job, they're not happy. And if you tell them, keep working there, and they're in these horrible conditions that they don't like, I doubt they're going to live a long life. So it is. And then the big problem is, we will have a lot more older adults working, whether they like it or not, because the healthcare system isn't set up for us. Social Security isn't set up for us. We don't have enough younger people putting into the pool to take care of the older adults. Inflation, costs are going up. So, Social Security was designed where we were going to die in our 60s, right? So now we're living into our 80s. It's a big problem. So whether you like it or not, you need to make more money as you get older. So that's why it's very important to have some kind of a plan, right? And and that's why it'd be ideal if you could shift. If you don't like your job, go find another one, because you probably will have to keep working.
Yeah, I think the immersion of second careers is definitely the new trend. The trend used to be like work and then find something you like to do because you don't need to work anymore. And now it's just find something you love doing as a new career, because you have to keep providing for yourself, for your family. We see a lot of people that are, for example, in Israel, where I come from originally, we see a lot of people in their 30s that still live with their parents, because the society as a whole has a hard time catching up with cost of living. But talking more about you being a nomad and the way that it translates into your health span, lifespan, and the way that you look, do you think that it contributes, or how do you manage things like, you travel, so obviously community is something that changes, right? Or, being so active as far as like moving from a place to place. How does your, self-care routine changes? What are some of the lessons that you have learned taking care of yourself as a nomad?
Oh, this is a good question. So, when my husband and I decided to really embark on our nomad journey, this was pre-pandemic, 2018. We every 1 to 4 weeks we were in a new country.
Wow.
And I remember, thinking about this. I was like, okay, we can do this, but I really got to figure out how I'm going to keep somewhat of a healthcare routine. And you can hack it. There's a lot of things you can do. Well, first of all, I have to be on board. I think anyone who's dragged into something like this kind of a lifestyle or doesn't want to do it, it's not going to impact their health in a positive way. So you have to do what you want to be doing. And I wanted to do this. So whenever I got to a new place, first thing I did was look for the space where I will be meditating or finding a green space or a corner in the room or something where I can have a bit of quiet and silence. The second thing, I would go out and try to find a gym or a park, or if not, the space in the hotel room. What tools can I use to do some squats and lifts? And then the third thing I do is look for pretty much forage for food. Where am I going to buy my food, or where am I going to eat? And searching for those health shops and healthy cafes, and that where can I get this? So those were three important things. That first thing I do every place I'd go, and I'd pretty much jump right into it because I had no time, right? If you be somewhere just a week, I'm not, and this is a lifestyle. Now, if I were on vacation or something, it's totally different, but this is a lifestyle. So I need to keep those routines, and I like to keep those routines. It makes me happy, and I feel much better knowing that I have these things in place. And I would have to do some research sometimes even before I flew in to the destination. And my husband knows me. He's the one who books all the hotels and Airbnbs. And so he'll always look for a place with a gym if it's possible, and or a park nearby where I can jump into and do some meditation or exercise and all that. So yeah, you just need a little bit of planning. And it's interesting you asked me this because I'm going to be on a panel at USC I've been invited at my university to speak with someone else and interview them about the challenges of traveling and staying healthy. And I think this person's position is that it's very unhealthy. And it depends on the perspective. And you mentioned community, and that's a real big challenge for me in terms of aging, because we know that community and your social life, this is a huge impact on your health. And I think it's the longest study ever done by Harvard, that Harvard adult study. And that's been going on for, I think, 75 years or so, still ongoing, looking at these people. And they look at all the factors of their life in terms of smoking and lifestyle and their eating habits and their education and their blood pressure and everything. And the one thing that stood out, the reason why a lot of these people, some of these people are living longer, is because of their social connections, their bonds with their friends and their family. So this is super important. This is where I'm going to have to keep building. I have a huge network because I travel so much, but I don't have those daily interactions that you have and that you need, especially when you get older and you think, who's got my back? If I fall down, or if I'm struggling, I need to get to the hospital, who's going to help me if I need that? Or checking in on me once in a while. Like you have that sense of security when you're in your 80s, and you can't imagine. I mean, I'm going to tell you, do you know how you're going to be when you're 80 years old? It's just
good question.
Hard to imagine, but we will be there if we are lucky, right? And so that's where, and you don't just go move into a new community when you're 70 and go, I'm going to build all these relationships. It takes time, it takes years, it takes energy, it takes experiences through years and years. And so at some point I will have to get more settled somewhere and keep nurturing that community. I have several communities all around the world, but I'll have to probably choose one at some point and say, this is it.
Do you think, so kind of to because we're coming towards the end of our conversation, so maybe I'll ask a question that's a little bit more out there. Do you think ever the metaverse or something to that extent, if it becomes as realistic. And when I mean realistic, also obviously the actual hardware, right? But I also mean the sense of our digital self as a bigger part of what we identify as ourselves, right? As our identity. Do you think the metaverse could ever replace a real community?
Not in the same way.
Not in the same way.
Not in the same. It helps, certainly helps, to be able to see you right now in a video
Yeah.
and have that connection. It's stronger than just listening to you. It's
Mm-hmm.
stronger than just receiving an email from you. So that's good. But just if I see you in person, and you and I met in person,
Yeah.
and we felt that energy, it's a
Mm-hmm.
chemistry, and
Yeah.
we cannot replace that. I haven't experienced it. I don't, it's certainly better than nothing, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, hopefully people will not go under a rock and not never see other humans, and that's it. But I'm gonna tell you, this happens a lot with older adults, and this is where loneliness and social isolation is a big deal. And we've covered a lot of this in my gerontology studies. Older
Mm-hmm.
adults, because they are shoved to the side, or because they lose their driver's license because they can't see so well, or they have an illness, or they don't hear anymore, so they don't want to go into those social settings because they don't want to keep asking what, and they don't want to wear a hearing aid. And so they start to pull themselves away from society. And if they're
Mm-hmm.
living in the suburb and they don't have a car and they don't have access to a bus, and it's a big problem. And that's where things spiral out of control. So yes, loneliness can kill you, can
Yeah.
shorten your lifespan. So we do need to it's having, I'm sure those people who are lonely and socially isolated have some connections with internet, but it's certainly not, I think, going to do the job in terms of actually seeing human beings. And there are many older adults and who the highlight of their day is just seeing the mailman, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not good enough.
Yeah, definitely. Even though it begs the question, what is better? Like, it's kind of weird, but is it better for us to have more interaction? And obviously, it's a scale, but is it better for us to have more interactions? Let's say these people in Bhutan, right, or people in homes here in the United States, like elderly homes. Is it better for us to have more constant interaction, but the examples around us are people with real emotional and physical decline, or less interactions, obviously not only with the mailman, but less interactions as a whole, but those interactions still put us in a position to be a real active member of society, or have the examples around us are of younger, more youthful people, and our mind doesn't get the examples of shuffling the feet or whatever else it can get as a bad kind of nourishment to how it should move and act. I don't know what the balance is, but I think, yeah.
It's individual. It's bio individual, right? It's
Yeah.
depends. So we can be socially isolated, but not lonely.
Mm.
And we can, have tons of people around us, but feel lonely.
Yeah.
So it's the loneliness factor that's more important. So if you are, whether you're in a community with other adults, whether it's a positive or negative experience, or whether you're alone at home, if you're feeling lonely, then that's got to change. And
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you're at. And that's where we need to pay attention to that, because it's like a slow degradation, and you don't see it, you don't see it. It's like people who, you suddenly wake up and you're like, my pants don't fit me anymore. Where did I gain all this weight? It just creeps up on you.
Yeah.
So we do need to pay attention to that. And if we want to, then we have to work now on those social skills. Not everybody's as extroverted as you or me. And it's really hard for them to go out and take part in an activity. And so, you need to practice, I think, now sooner than later. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As a gerontologist and a nomad, I've been to Israel several times, but I want to hear your perspective. And I visited with, not really with the gerontology hat on. So I'm wondering what is it like in Israel in terms of older adults, and are they a part of society? Are they revered? Are they pushed to the side? What's it like there?
It's funny that you're asking me, because I was smiling and I was just thinking about my grandfather. which I'm going to get to in a second. But just obviously, Israel is a big driver in the gerontology, in their gerontological research community, right? We have the Weizmann Institute and the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, which publish a lot of the studies in health span and longevity, whether it's hyperbaric chamber, whether it is like detecting brain bleeding, hot and cold exposure, many of the things that people hear and get in research that is being quoted comes out of Israel. So from that point of view, that's one thing that would answer your question. We are an active part or a contributor in the overall knowledge. Now, as far as Israel as a society and how we treat the elderly, that's also complicated. Israel is obviously a safe haven, in air quotes, for the Jewish diaspora, right? And I can tell you this as an immigrant, is that when you move from one place to another, you're like a tree that has left a lot of its mycology behind, right? A lot of the fertile ground where you grew up is now being taken away from you. And obviously, I see my parents like once a year, and I need to build new social connections, etc. And a lot of the same thing happens in Israel. We have a few programs to socialize Holocaust survivors and people who moved from the Eastern Bloc to Israel, because a lot of them have no one in the world. Maybe they were married and the spouse died. Again, maybe they were just plopped somewhere and they didn't make the right social connections. But it is described as a national problem in Israel, loneliness among the elderly. The reason I was smiling and thinking about my grandfather is because the opposite is true within kibbutz societies. So a kibbutz is basically communities. You can call it a commune. It's a little bit more complicated if someone doesn't know what a kibbutz is. But basically, it's people who moved to Israel, anywhere from the 30s, 40s to the 70s, 80s, and they were sympathetic to the socialist ideology, but wanted to live in Israel. So they started those socialistic villages, which had anywhere from like 50 to 500,000 members. And I was born in one of those. And my grandfather, my grandfather lived there. My grandfather was one of the people who founded the kibbutz that I grew up in. He also died in the kibbutz, and he was the absolute opposite of what we're talking here. He had a community until the day he died, and he had no perception or very low perception of the fact of his decline. So he insisted to go in and work until his late 80s. He was still driving his car and his golf cart until his mid 90s. And the reason I was smiling is because he definitely scratched some cars with his car and golf cart out of inflated belief in his skills into his 90s. And obviously, I can consider myself blessed for my genetics, because my elders died late in their late 90s, but it is also because they had a great community to lean on. So I can say it from personal experience that this helps mentally, physically, whatever. But again, Israel is very diverse, and in bigger cities, it is a problem to the other end of the spectrum.
Interesting. I'm pleased to hear that. It is good to hear that the community plays such a big role in how long we live and the quality of life that we have, because it was a real disappointment for me when I was studying gerontology, is that the people who are living longer and healthier are the people who have money. And so this is really unfair in that sense. It's because we can afford better medical care, we can afford better food, we are better educated, and all of this helps us make better health decisions. So education, I think, is a real big player as well. It almost means that it kind of explains a little bit the Latino paradox. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Where Latino women, at least in the US, are the longest living people in the US. Yeah. And, generally we'd say it's a white woman who lives longer, but it's those Latinos who are living a little bit longer. And that's just, it could be maybe because of the community is so much stronger. Within the Latino community, the family, the bonds are very super important. I'm wondering if that community and social aspect is making that them that live at an extra long.
So as far as I know, the Latino paradox, it only relates to Latino immigrants, right? It doesn't
Yes,
relate to like
yes,
third. Yeah, so
yes.
I have a different theory as far as immigrants from different countries go.
Hmm.
Especially because the Israeli community is considered one of the most successful immigrant communities within the U.S. You also have the again, like Latino is a big section, but let's talk here in Miami. Cuban community is extremely successful. Obviously, the Indian community, where when we lived in California, had the same not only reputation but statistics to prove it. And I believe that all of those communities, what they have in common is the belief in their way of family structure, the belief in their inherent, let's call it like social structure. And the reason that they immigrated to the US is the belief that the US has better opportunities to offer them. And I can see, and again, no offense to any other community, but being very interested in it, seeing other communities that, or individuals, I should say, actually, because it's not like I saw whole communities, but individuals came to the US because they thought that the US had the better social and structural norms that they wanted to adopt. Normally, also experience disappointment and also experience loneliness long term, because it's no secret that our uber work oriented and socially depleted society here does not drive strong connections, communities, etc. So I think there is something there about Latino communities and the reason they chose to live in the U.S. and kind of the perception of what they want to keep together and what they want to adopt from the U.S. that makes them the ultimate candidate, right? They love their families, and because they love their families, they came to the U.S. to get a better opportunity to serve their families, or from lack of my better ability to explain myself. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And there is a certain profile for that person who decides to leave their country and go
Mm-hmm.
to live in a completely foreign land. You need to be a certain type and you need to be resilient, and because it's not going to be easy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm wondering if there's, there is some talk about, yeah, the profile of that person already giving them a predisposition for living a longer life, because you need a lot of chutzpah to go and leave, right?
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of maybe finish on a nice note and a hopeful note, we did talk about your experience with healthy habits and traveling, and now you are in Marbella, Spain,
Yeah.
and you just came back from Portugal. What are some of your favorite health discoveries that you've discovered, not even recently, but from your travels in the last couple of years? What did you see that we are not necessarily unaware of, but we have integrated less into our health habits here in America, and that you've learned through your travels?
Well, two things come to mind. The first thing that came to mind was I used to live in Hong Kong, and I remember every morning around 6 a.m., the parks are full of people
Wow.
exercising or practicing Tai Chi or doing a dance class or learning how to swords or karate. I mean, it just was incredible. Mostly older adults.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave them a reason to wake up in the morning. It gave them some social time. It gave them their vitamin D when they just got outside, gives them some exercise. It gives them so many great benefits. And
Mm-hmm.
it's either free or very low cost.
Yeah.
It doesn't it's really, we don't need a gym. We don't need a gym membership. There's a lot of people who don't like going to the gym. And you don't see many older adults going to the gym. And so maybe this is a little intimidating as well. So I would say that's the first thing that came to my mind. The other thing that came to my mind is I've been in Europe for a long time, and we definitely have a slower pace here in terms of taking a break for lunch, extended lunches. We don't eat at the desk. We don't carry a coffee down the street. Like, you don't see people doing that, especially in Hong Kong. And you would never see anybody eating and walking at the same time. There's not even garbage cans in some of these places where they're just, because people don't do that. And actually in Japan, I remember there's a vending machine. People would stop and eat, stay at the vending machine. There was a trash can right next to the vending machine, but they wouldn't actually walk and do that. So we stop when we're eating. We stop and we sit down. We take our coffee in an actual ceramic mug or cup. There's not.
Yeah, that's the interesting story that I have to tell people about Switzerland. When I had some meetings with a few to Switzerland, and I remember I had to kill time. I went to Starbucks in Switzerland, and they served me coffee in a ceramic mug, and it blew my mind.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. So listen, Zora, this was an amazing conversation. I super appreciate the time that you gave us, and I think there is someone should listen to this conversation a couple of times in order to absorb everything that we've covered here. So I just thank you so much for the time you gave us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I will send you some of those studies that I mentioned. I just can't remember the names of the dates on top of my head, but you can at least include them in the show notes, and people can do some of their own research, because it's quite fascinating.
Yes. So Zora, just to kind of sum up, as anyone who's listened to us can figure out, you have your wealth of knowledge, and you are living it, and that is why I'd love for people to kind of follow your journey and the information you put out there, which is incredible. So please tell us where they can find you, about the podcast, everything that they need to know in order to immerse themselves in the Zora the Explorer experience.
Oh, thank you. Yes, everything is Hack My Age. It's the website, it's the Instagram, it's the Facebook. I have a Biohacking Women 50 Plus Facebook group where we have a lot of chatter and you can ask questions. And I have a new program coming out in November called the Energy Reboot Program for women over 50, because I'm focused on older women. And that's where you can find everything. And I'm very accessible. You can always shoot me a message on any of those platforms.
Sounds amazing. And obviously these links are going to be in the show notes. So thank you again, Zora. And I wish you a beautiful rest of your week, and to everyone listening as well.
Thank you.